Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hey, I'm Ben Chodor, and welcome to our panel, How Owned Media Can Drive Strategic Communications and Brand Growth. All right, so I have an incredible panel. A couple things, we're gonna make this very, very interactive. So team, anytime you wanna jump in on anyone else's questions, let's make it that way. And if you have questions for me, let's do that as well. All right, I wanna introduce my panel. Sitting next to me is Mark. Mark is the Chief Product Officer and Strategy Officer at ScribbleLive. Mark, what does ScribbleLive do?
ScribbleLive, we call ourselves a content performance company. We work with the world's largest brands, marketers, and media companies, really trying to help them create content that performs. And the way we think about that is you want to create content that attracts and engages, that converts, and that retains your audience.
Right, awesome. And next to you is Deirdre. Deirdre is the CEO of Pure Performance Communications. All right, first, you're an author, you're a podcaster, you're about to launch a Facebook Live show. You do it all in the space. How'd you get into the space?
Oh my goodness. Well, I was one of those kids who actually picked public relations when I was in high school.
Really?
Yeah, because I love to write. My guidance counselor said you can either do two things. You can be a journalist or you can be in PR. And I've never looked back.
What was your first job out of school?
So I was at Padilla, Spear, Burdick, and Beardsley in New York City
your
agency.
And your role was?
I was just a junior account executive.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Thanks.
And next to you is Jeff Stacey. So I have a great fondness to Jeff for a couple of reasons. One is he's the head of PR, product management, and digital media solutions at West. So I get the privilege of working with Jeff every day. And as I go deeper and deeper in the organization and learn more and more about PR and the importance of PR, Jeff has been sort of my tutor in the space. Jeff has been in it for a long time. He's a really young man, but he's been in it for a long time. How did you get into the space?
I am a really young man. Thank you for
I know
noticing.
I noticed.
I've been in the space since 1998. That's a long time ago,
Wow.
isn't it? So I started a business. I was a co-founder of Globe Newswire. So it was really a mutual friend of mine introduced me to the other co-founder of Globe Newswire. He was a sales manager at PR Newswire. So he knew all the sales and marketing aspects. I knew how to run businesses, how to develop software. So I did all the software development and engineering and finance, and he brought the customers. And as you know, sales is the lifeblood of an organization, so we couldn't have done it without him.
Awesome. Let's jump into the program. Our agenda, obviously, meet the panel, which you just did. First topic we're going to cover is what is owned media and why is it important? Second topic is tips for optimizing your channels and content. Third topic is the future of media, and then Q&A. And here's a reminder. If you have questions, type them in throughout the program, because we're not just going to wait to the end of the program to answer your questions. Next piece of housekeeping. Hey, we're going to make this interactive. I want you guys to get involved, not just us doing all the talking. So right now, if you just pull out your cell phones, and as if you were texting to one of your friends as a phone number, type in 22333. Again, that's 22333. All right, and then in the message bar, type in the word or the letters WDMS, and that stands for West Digital Media Solutions. And again, the phone number is going to be 22333, and the message is WDMS. You only have to do this once. It registers your phone, and then throughout the rest of the program, when we ask a polling question, just go back to that phone number, 22333, and where you wrote in WDMS, write in your answer, whether it's A, B, C, D, or whatever it corresponds. Second, in the platform, if you're not watching this on social, you can actually ask questions in the Q&A module. So in the webcast player, there's a place to ask a question. Ask as many questions as possible. And then please tweet using West Owned Media. So spread the word, all right? Share this link, right? Download materials. In the platform, you can download a lot of materials that we're talking about today. If you're not watching this live, watch out for the on-demand webinar. This will be available on demand so you can share it with your friends. And as we're doing this event, please share this with your social network. All right, today's topic is about social and how you're going to do stuff with media. So why don't we all start and do the first thing you're supposed to do? When you're watching something and you like it, share it on your social network. I mean, that's like my one advice to anyone who's out there. If your company is creating content, if you're creating content, if you're watching anything, the only way anyone ever gets to know about it is if you share it. So why don't we start off with sharing? And now I'm going to go into my first poll. So the first poll question, I just want to know who's streaming today. Is your organization live streaming? So let's get the, it's not about on demand, it's not about putting video. Are you doing live events? Yes or no? And again, you already typed in 2233. You don't need to do that again. Just in your text bar, type in A or B. All right, we're going to talk about this for a couple minutes because I have to give the audience about a minute to put their poll in so we get real results. So Mark, are they?
First of all, I think it depends on the organization. But I think in general, I think live streaming is probably still used in limited ways by most organizations. Probably mostly for internal purposes. Certainly we see at ScribbleLive, we've got a lot of customers who live stream events, large events. You know, Dell's a customer of ours. So I think large companies are using it for events, for promoting their brand. But I think generally it's still early stages for certainly the SMB market in terms of live streaming.
Deirdre?
Yeah, I would agree. I'd say more companies are in the research phases as there's different platforms that are launching and they're seeing live streaming through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, that they're looking into it, but not everybody's there.
Jeff?
Yeah, I agree as well. So I think the poll results are going to come back that not a lot of people are doing live streaming, but I think more and more people are becoming comfortable with it as they, on their social, their private social, they do a Facebook live stream with their friends and other things. So I see a lot of people doing that on their personal accounts, and maybe as they feel more comfortable with it, they'll bring it into their brand.
I mean, I personally think that every organization should be live streaming, whether you're live streaming internally, right, or on today's topic. You got to create content, and you got to give it ability to get out to your audience.
You know, one of the things I think is going to drive that even further is, just give you a simple example. You know, to live stream, you have to be comfortable being on camera. A lot of people aren't. You go into any meeting today, most people have their cameras off. One of the things that we do at ScribbleLive is we have a rule that if you're working remotely or working from home and you have a meeting, you have to have your camera on to connect with people. As more people do that, they're going to feel comfortable seeing their face, and I think that'll lead to more ability to do live streaming.
I mean, I want to see your face. I want to see your expressions. I have a thing on my leadership calls. You have to be on camera. I mean, it's not because I want to make sure you're paying attention. It's more because I can't engage with you. And I want you guys to see, because you can construe what I'm saying by looking at me. You can't construe what I'm saying if you just hear me or something written. So I think it's really important.
It's body language.
And body language, right? You
Body
can't fake body language.
You can read people.
Which a lot of people see when I'm on a lot of conference calls and I'm showing my video, I'm doing this a lot or like this, and they know that he's zoned out, he's not part of it. Let's go to the results. All right, this is a crazy result. 100% of our audience today is live streaming. All right, and I can actually say, because again, 100% of our audience who's watching this is watching a live stream. So it isn't something new to them. But I am surprised that it's only 100 people. Does this surprise you guys at all? Let's close the poll right now. Surprise you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm quite surprised.
Pleasantly
I
surprised.
guess it tells you the quality of our audience here,
That's
too.
really good.
They're more advanced in what they're doing. They're more advanced in their PR and other things. And so this is really good news.
So then our next poll question, which we're going to go over now, is going to make total sense. So 100% of the audience watching actually is streaming. So now let's find out. Are you guys streaming Periscope, which means are you streaming into Twitter? Are you streaming into YouTube Live? Are you streaming into Facebook Live? Are you using free streaming platforms? It could be like Twitch, and there's a lot of other products out there. Or is it paid streaming platforms? And again, you've already put the phone number in, 22333. Now type in A, B, C, D, or E. You can't do more than one. All right, where do you think most people are streaming?
Again, depends on, I think, the type of business they have. I think if you're a large organization, again, doing big events, you're probably going to use a paid streaming platform. If you're a blogger, or if you're a small company, some of these, Facebook and Periscope are really easy to start. They're free. They get great distribution. You don't have to build an audience as much as you can with a paid media, paid streaming solution. So I think it'll depend what type of company you are and what your goals are.
All right, so I actually have an opinion on this one. If you're doing A, B, or C, then you should be doing all three every single time. Because I think the power of social is go where your audience is. The power of a free platform or paid platform is you want to bring people to you. And I understand the power of that, right? You get the marketing things, like those of you who logged on to this broadcast, by registering, we get a lot of information about you. But why would you force people to come on Facebook if I'm not a Facebook user? Why would you force me to go to YouTube if I don't use YouTube? If Jeff likes Twitter, that's where he gets his news, his information. Watch it on Twitter. Like, they're still going into your site.
Right.
I mean, Deirdre, what do you think? Because you work with a lot of clients.
So I just feel like you have to be where people want you to be, always. So that's going to play into what is your audience like? What do they expect? What do they expect from you?
Right. Where do you think the results are going to be, Jeff?
Well, I didn't get the first result right, so I'm not going to venture a guess on this one. But it's obviously important to understand your audience and know where your audience is.
Yep.
So if a large part of your audience is on Twitter, go with Periscope. I mean, obviously, all three is really good, but you do need to understand where your audience is.
You know, and the other thing is that each of those platforms, we talk about the three platforms, have slightly different interaction capabilities.
Yep.
So it also, you know, what you're looking for.
Right.
So with Twitter, not only can use live stream through Periscope, but you can pull in content and hashtags that inform the conversation. With YouTube, you know, it's a little bit different. So it depends.
And I also think with Twitter, you could instantly create a bigger audience because anyone watching it is also tweeting at the same time.
Discoverability.
And then Jeff gets to know about it and he jumps on, right? Discoverability is,
Yeah.
all right, dead on.
I think you can also, when you're testing, you're
Yeah.
going to use a free platform.
Right.
So a lot of people, when they're stepping out of their comfort zone, they want to do a test first. They call it a pilot series or however they want to start. Then they'll move to something
You know
more
what's
advanced.
interesting about that? Because if I think about it on the enterprise level side, I think social scares the heck out of most corporate America, where private gated, whether it's internal or external, it's kind of safer.
Right.
You know, I'm controlling my message, I'm controlling my audience. The moment, I mean, this is the reality. The moment I put something on Periscope or Twitter or Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, it's out there.
Right.
The world knows.
But you know, if we want to think further ahead, and I'm talking about 5-10 years, so I've got teenagers, boy-girl twins. I think like you have boy-girl twins.
I do boy-girl twins.
And so they are into YouTube streaming for a number of reasons, but largely monetization driven. They see their heroes making $500,000 a month streaming from their basement, games or doing makeup tutorials. And so if you look at the next generation, I don't think they're using Facebook Live, they're not using Periscope, they're using YouTube Live. Yep. And it's interesting to see when they get into the workforce, do they continue that, and does YouTube continue that?
So I'm just told the results are in. Let's show the results to the web, and let's look at the results. I'm actually looking at them for the first time with you guys. 14% of the world or audience says that Periscope, 29% say Facebook, 14% say 29% say YouTube, 14% say Facebook. Other free streaming, 14%. So it's like 70% of the world, of this audience, is actually using public-facing streaming. So I was actually kind of wrong on this one. Other paid streaming platforms, it's 30% of our audience. This actually says a lot to me. What does it say to you, Jeff?
Well, I mean, a healthy percentage is still internal, right? So a healthy percentage is still wants to have a private area. So if you combine those second two, so you know, obviously, if you're a big brand, you're worried a bit more about what ads YouTube is going to run after your video. And if you're not Procter & Gamble, right, you can't have the influence to really control it. So these closed environments, I think, are really, really important for companies who want to carefully manage their brand.
Right. Anyone other comments before we jump into the first question?
I would just say I thought Facebook would be higher.
Right.
And YouTube, does that speak to that younger generation that you're trying to reach?
So I'm going to say I can almost guarantee the reason why it's YouTube is every organization over the last 3 or 4 years, not with live, it's where they dumped their content. If you wanted to put something outside of your own website, YouTube was around before Twitter was around, before Facebook. Yeah. It's just where you put content. So now if I already built an audience of watching my on-demand content on YouTube, it's probably the first place you're going to stream live into. I have a lot of, I could give you reasons why I think it's not the ideal place only to go live. And part of it is because on the right-hand side is all your competitors' information. And if you go into my Twitter page, it's my Twitter page. And if you go into my Facebook, but I get it. Any thoughts?
I think that's an interesting point, but in terms of where you put your content and build it, you've invested in building an audience. Why not take advantage of that audience when you go live?
That's right. Syndicate your content. All right. So now we're going to go right into this. So Deirdre, I want you to walk us through this first slide. You actually supplied us with the slide, but this is really good. This is what today's conversation is about. Earned media, shared media, owned media, and paid media.
Right.
What's it all about?
PESO. Okay, shout out to Spin Sucks because they developed this beautiful model.
Which might be my new favorite company name. Spin Sucks, right? I love
sucks,
that.
right? Because spin sucks. So this model is perfect. It really shows how a brand can build authority
Right.
through the media it uses, and you have to focus on different media channels: paid, earned, shared, owned. Back in the day in public relations, we really focused only on earned, but today we realize that to tell a story, you have an opportunity to reach your consumer in so many different places, and you need to in order to sort of resonate with them and create action.
And I think one of the things that's really changed with the PESO model over the years is how technology has informed it. So, for example, going back to just focusing on earned media for PR. Well, with paid and shared now, not only can you do that, but the technology underneath it allows for such specific targeting and persona-driven. So you can actually target the exact customer you want through Facebook ads or through some filtering. And so that really helps you not just throw something out there, but specifically use a sniper shot rather than a broad.
Great point.
Can you give me like three examples of what owned media is?
Well, owned media is primarily the things that you control. I kind of live by the maxim of control your controllables.
Yep.
Owned is the one that you can control. It's your website. It's basically your voice. It's your website. It's your blog. It's your customer portals. It's your email marketing newsletters. Anything that you control is your podcast. And increasingly, we talked about a little bit before, it's hard to do. But it's vital to get the story of your brand out and build long-lasting relationships with your customers.
I want to jump in on that. So
Absolutely.
Even though it's the control word, of course, once it gets out there, you sort of lose control what people say. But also, even though it's owned, we always have to recognize that it has to have meaning. It has to be about, even though it's your messages, you're connecting with people, and it has to be for
Really
them.
good point. Really good point. So jumping along, so content-wise, Jeff, what are some channels?
So channels, I see it as sort of your websites, and there's a bunch of different
Yeah.
types of websites. You've got your corporate website that you have to have. You have your media newsroom or media hub where you store all this content. Obviously, your blog is really important. So websites, social channels, obviously Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Vimeo, etc. And then sort of the content that you either broadcast out, either press releases you control, email marketing that Mark mentioned, so either broadcasting out a press release to get attention and bringing customers back to all this content, or sort of one-on-one messaging via email. I think text messaging is growing more and more. So those are your basic channels. Now, obviously, trying to provide content across all these channels all the time is one of the real challenges in the market. So you got to kind of pick some of your channels and try to excel in each one of those.
And I would also say that owned, while it's kind of across the board, there are more content types that you need to engage with and basically play with owned rather than the others. So it's not only video and text, it's case studies, it's infographics. You could use those on paid and shared, but really in owned you have much more kind of view in terms of types of content.
All right, so
I
and
think
Jeff.
this model is extremely important because to me it all starts with owned media. Right. I don't think you should be doing
point.
paid
Anything else if you do.
advertising if you don't have some to drive back to some content to actually do something or sort of have a call to action for the customer to download your white paper or learn more or whatever. What's the point of doing paid advertising if you're going to drive them to a nothing site?
Well, so Deirdre, this makes me think about this then. Since we've learned about so many different channels in so many different ways, how important is that your messaging is consistent no matter which channel you go to? And do a lot of organizations kind of mess me up with different messaging wherever I go?
So I think that brands get fragmented, especially when it gets out on social media, and it is so important that your customers or constituents recognize the brand, and that you have to make sure that the messages go across, and even that your own people understand. Because think of big organizations from the top, the corporate branded communication, all the way through the different product areas, out through social media. you don't want your message to be lost. So I think it's important to audit and to make sure that's happening and to know that your communication is effective.
Yeah,
Okay.
so for me,
Yep.
I think as you're developing your content, you need to share it internally with everyone, and your internal communication should be really consistent, global, the same
Huge.
everywhere. So when you're developing content externally, you do have to customize a bit.
Yep.
You have to localize a bit for different markets, even if it's just sort of North America versus Europe versus Asia Pac. You have to sort of customize a bit
Know your
externally.
audience,
But
right.
if you start with a really consistent internal message, then all of your external messaging will have some consistency.
And we see that with a lot of our customers.
Yep.
They'll create a piece of own content, and then they create micro derivatives of that they can push through paid and shared and earned. So,
Which makes me jump to the next slide, right? So, Deirdre, why is owned media so important to an organization's communication strategy? And there's this think ahead slide. What is this all about?
Okay, so it's so important because that's your opportunity to be able to connect through content. People rally around content, but it's not good if it's only just your messages. Think allows you to really connect before it goes out there because you understand it's all about the timing. H in think is the heart that you put into it because you understand people. I is independent thinking because today we might have to be taking a stance for our customers and be their voice. N is new navigation. Here we're all saying about streaming. Clearly they're doing it, but there's going to be something new coming forward. And then knowledge, the data we have that is so rich that feeds us so that we can make sure our own content or any kind of content matters to somebody else.
So, Jeff, when you see this slide, what do you think?
I love this slide, and so, yeah, I think there's positive things to consider from each one of these, but I think the number one of timing and relevance and resonance is just so critical, right? There's no point in making some big announcement when the whole rest of your market is trending on something else and is paying attention to some other event that's it. You want to take some event that's already trending and make an announcement and join that conversation and try to start your own conversation.
and that's, well, I have a horse in this race. Before I was at ScribbleLive, I was the founder of a company called TrendSpotter. That's been integrated into ScribbleLive. We just released a product called TrendHub, and TrendHub is all about that, is informing, allowing customers to basically use audience insights and trend insights to figure out what's going to resonate with your audience, how do you bring them in, and how do you ensure that what you're putting out is actually going to be relevant to their interests?
How does it gather the information? Like, how do you find out what I'm thinking?
So we look at social graph data, we look at recent behaviors you have online, and so understand a audience's interests, their recent behaviors, their predilections to what they want to really engage with, and then serving up content that addresses that need.
So the CMO or the chief communication officer, is this a key to them?
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing more and more marketing organizations who've basically put out content based on gut or based on their own timing, right? We have a press release. Well, my audience doesn't really care about that. What are they cared about? There's other things happening in the industry.
They've established their calendar, and over the next 6 months, they're going to produce this sort of content. But that's not
Without
what's
really
happening
thinking
right
about what
now.
their audience and not being able to move in real time?
It's important to do that, but you have to react in real time. And if you're going to get, earned media, if you're going to get, on the Wall Street Journal or some lesser publication, you've got to have something that's resonating now in the market, that's trending now.
And the second part to that is how do you get greater distribution and share of voice? Not only can you know what your audience is interested in, but when we talk about shared media, understand what hashtags and other topics are trending alongside of it. Use that as part of your social distribution strategy. That's discoverable, that's searchable. It opens up a new market for you.
Deirdre, is this the biggest change in the space where even 5 years ago, there wasn't noise, right? There wasn't social noise out there. You could, like Jeff mentioned, you could live off your media calendar because no one was going to jump in and say, hey, you need to make a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn. How are you dealing with that? Like, how do your clients deal with that?
This is a huge change. I think that clients are realizing, especially CMOs, that they actually need to have data scientists on the team to be able to understand all this rich data that's coming in so that they're not just focused on what the brand is doing and what are our trade show events and what products are we launching, that we're syncing up with the market and how people are feeling and what they need.
Jeff, when you got into space, did anyone ever use the word data scientist and PR and marketing together?
Not in the same sentence.
Never. I don't even think
If I
PR
remember
and
your
data
beginning,
were in the
because you've been in the
same
space for a long time too.
And it's interesting. Scott Brinker, who leads the MarTech conference, someone I know pretty well, talking about how marketing now is, really about technology. historically, marketing was about creatives.
Right.
Now, you have to find the right balance. It can't be all robots and AI.
Yep.
But increasingly using technology to inform those things about data science, around trends, around insights.
And did you just say AI and robots? This is our next slide that I want Deirdre to walk through a little bit. Come on, is there a better slide than sex, lives, and AI? What is this all about?
That's just to get attention.
Well, you got all of our attention, so.
That's good. So this is an example of how you can use a piece of owned content to carve it up and really share in different ways. This was a study that Syzygy, a digital marketing company, did. It was 2,000 consumers in the United States, all about their fears and hopes of AI.
Right.
And this study alone, we took it as the cornerstone cobblestone approach. The cornerstone being the study, and then you carve it up into different pieces, and we shared it through blog posts, we did news releases, there are pitches, we had the managing director on TV, she did radio interviews, byline articles. It's just to show how owned media can fuel everything else, and I think that's what you had mentioned before.
It's not about sex, lies, and AI specifically. It's take a really interesting topic, a compelling topic, do a survey, and then you end up creating all of this own content out of that.
Mark, before you answer that, Kathleen, I'm going to ask us questions throughout. Kathleen, anytime a question comes in, just jump in and say, hey, we have a question from the audience, okay? So, as you were saying, Mark?
Sorry, I was just going to say that, creating content is hard, right? Creating compelling content is hard. So if you go to all the effort of creating this, great, sexy report about sex, lies, and AI, you want to make sure that you repurpose it, that you distribute it, that you get the most value out of it, rather than just having one report. You
so
put it on
not
your
just
website.
one and done. Use your content and continue on it. Give me one marketing use case
for
own content.
Well, primarily, I would say, first of all, it's your website, right? I think about own content, it's your voice. It's the voice of the company. It's what you want to relate to. And so much of it is around storytelling. What's the story of West? What's the story of ScribbleLive? Why should customers care about us? What's our value to them? And that's what own content is about. It starts with, it could be your website, it could be your blog, as Jeff said, your social channels. I think the reality is today that story or that narrative isn't as consistent as probably it should be. Because other people different people in different organizations, units are running social versus the website versus the blog.
But it's also brand journalism. So even though we're talking about storytelling and the company story and doing that in interesting ways, when you get into brand journalism, then the company is seen as a thought leader because perhaps you're doing an interview-style podcast or streaming live and you've got guests and it's thought leaders and you're speaking to topics like AI, which is so hot right now.
So Jeff, a lot of our clients are investor relations. How does it play in IR?
So I think it plays in IR, not to the extent of PR, but IR is much more structured, much more risk averse. I think you need to first start with the fact that your IRO, and I think most of our audience here are probably PR and marketing folks, but it starts with your IRO knowing everything that you're doing, because they might be questioned by investors about some recent announcement or something they saw trending on Twitter or whatever. So it's first educating and making sure internally your IRO knows. But IROs also produce content. It's much more structured in terms of earnings releases and sort of detailed presentations to the investor community. But that's a specific audience, and you have to develop content for that audience. It's just like any other audience, right? So as you look at all the audiences that you're communicating with, that's one key audience, and you have to tailor some content for that audience.
That makes sense, because my investors in my company or my shareholders in the company, I need to be able to give them content as much as my customers who buy my product. And even though it's not always the same message, it's delivered differently, but overall, we're trying to give our corporate image a message. All right, so Kathleen has a question. So Kathleen, first time we're hearing from you today. How are you, Kathleen?
Just fine, Ben, thank you.
Awesome. Ask
the
us our first question.
That came in is a follow-up actually to the conversation around data science and data intelligence that the panel was just discussing. So what indicators should we be looking at to first figure out how to plan for what's next?
Mark?
That's a great point. So there are, I think, a few things. One of them is who your audience is, understanding their personas, and then you can then look into using various technology and solutions. ScribbleLive has some, other people have others. And the second is your industry and the topics that are emerging around that. For example, we talked about AI is a buzzy thing going on today in technology. In the MarTech world, there are other buzzy things going on around, ABM, right? So those things, key topics, your audience, that helps you understand, where you need to be, at least informs your content strategy.
Great.
I would say also tapping into influencers. So there are influencers in every market that are driving conversations. And I think that being able to see that data intelligence, you'll know who your influencers are and what's the best way to connect to give you the what's next.
And that's a great point. In fact, a number of our customers, what they use us for is to find those trending influencers. Who are the ones that can really drive the conversational velocity and take your message and push it through their social graph and amplify it.
I think it's really valuable.
And action.
But so Jeff, on our side, how important is our influencer network?
So it's extremely important, right? So obviously for any particular company, you have a unique set of influencers.
Right.
And so you have to first identify who your influencers are and start to really engage with them, build a relationship with them over time.
Right.
Obviously we have a product called Influencers that does this, that uses TrendSpotter as one of the data sources. But what's really critical is you spend the time to build relationships with your key influencers.
See,
You
I don't
can't just do it all.
I don't understand why anyone would ever send a press release and not at the same time target the influencers who write or blog or do something socially or industry experts in that space. It's not just send it out there and leave it alone. Don't you have to? I mean, is that one of the biggest changes you're seeing, Jeff?
Yeah, it is. It is a really large change in the market, and it's really hard to do. And that's why people still just rely on press releases and broadcasting them out. They rely on broadcasting emails. They write their white papers, and it's really hard to do influencer marketing well. And so you have to put in the time and effort, or you're not going to see the rewards.
And I think organizations have to understand, like, there's a reason. This isn't the same for business, but there's a reason why someone's going to pay Kim Kardashian $4 million to hold up a pair of shoes, because they sell $5 million worth of the shoes. The same thing works in business and enterprise. If you're trying to reach tax accountants and you reach one of the bloggers or multiple bloggers who write about that and have a rabid following, that's more valuable than just putting it out there.
Yeah, I agree. Although I would say that it shouldn't be a one and done thing. You have
Right.
to build a relationship over time. But understanding who these influencers are, how they impact your business, are your customers influenced by them? All those things help shape your messaging.
The
And
challenge
also-
is if you don't do it right, they could negatively influence
yeah.
it too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I was just going to say that every influencer is different. And it's also, you have to understand what they want to do and how they would like to participate with your brand. Because some influencers, sure, they might just share a tweet if you DM them and say, hey, I've got something to share. If you like it, tweet. Others might participate in your webinars or whatever you're doing, knowing what they like to do.
Well, I think that's a really important part. Nothing is free.
Yep.
There is a dark underbelly to a lot of things.
Absolutely.
There's certainly a
Yes.
dark underbelly to the influencer market
Right.
space, paid influencer marketing. So you have to be really careful what you're getting into.
But I truly believe in the power of one. All you need is one person, if you reach out, to do something that's
Right.
going to lead to your company being acquired, your product selling more than it sold before, you maybe getting your next job. I think you can't look at it like just how many people I'm reaching. You got to reach about, am I going to reach the right person? And you're not going to do it just by doing something blindly.
Absolutely.
All right, it's time to get the audience involved again. Let's go to our next poll. Poll number 3. What kind of content do you struggle with creating? Is it A, case studies, B, infographics, C, podcast, D, press releases, E, social posts, F, video, G, webcasts, H, white papers, 1 other. And again, you guys should know this by now. The phone number you're texting it to is 22333. And this time you don't have to put in WDMS, just put A through I. All right, so as we look at this, we were actually talking before we started. Jeff, 10 years ago, the only one that, or even 6 years ago, the only one that would be on that list really would be press releases, and you said maybe white papers.
And now that I look at the list, maybe other.
Other
That's all.
things.
Maybe other.
But yeah, press releases have been around for a long time, and white papers, I think, have been published for a while. They're much more prevalent today than they were in the past. But yeah, all of this is new. And so it'll be really interesting to see I think press release is the easiest type of content. So the most difficult, it'll be interesting to see what comes back.
Which do you think, Mark, is the best one to tell your story? If I'm just trying to tell a story.
That's great. I always think video is a great
Right.
way to tell a story. I also think video is one of the hardest things to do.
Yep.
I know from our customers' perspective, it's not only just video anymore. It's the next phase of video. It's interactive video. I'll give you a good example. One of our big customers sells wiper blades, and they want to create a story about that. Well, they didn't want to just create a video. They want to create a 360 interactive video.
Yep.
Those are really hard to do.
Yep.
White papers, while they've been around for a long time, are also really hard to do because it takes a lot of thought and consideration.
You know what's really interesting? I think that when you were saying about video, I think video is the most compelling at all, but video doesn't have to be high end.
Right.
But if you don't do it right, it's the easiest one to be the most negative. And what I mean by that, it's not about doing it in a studio like this. I love watching video where someone created with their iPhone. It's your messaging better be spot on because every word you say can be misconstrued. Everything you do, you have this one chance to get my mind, right? Or to get my human capital in it. Deirdre, you looked like you were going to add something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that also not just what you're saying, but what your body language says is really important. So I just remember when Domino's had that horrible incident happen and the CEO did the YouTube video apology. His body language was matching the messaging of how sorry they are, what happened.
I think it was Papa John's.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah.
Papa John's recently,
Pizza,
yes.
it's pizza.
Yeah.
It's-
Domino's was way back.
Domino's, see? So
Yeah.
I'm only thinking what's common to my mind. All right, we have a question, but before we go to the question, I want to show the results. Can we go to the results, please? What kind of content do you struggle with creating? Pretty interesting. 13% of the audience says podcast. 13% say press release, Jeff. Check that one out. 63% are right with you, Mark, on video. And obviously 13% say webcast. And I'll actually put webcast and video together. So I'll say 75% of people have trouble creating something with video. Before I ask you, Jeff, about why press release, we were talking earlier. I know you create a podcast, Deirdre.
Yes.
I mean, it's a huge commitment.
Right.
So it's not like podcast shouldn't be one and done. Why do you think 13% of the audience are like,
So I think that it's the commitment, number one, because it's not one and done. Every week you are working towards publishing, but yet you're planning 2 more guests that you're going to be interviewing. There's so much that goes into it, and that takes a lot. Organizations don't have a lot of resources, so they have to think carefully.
Mark, what jumps out at you here when you look at this?
Well, it's what I hear in the market every day. Video is really hard to do, and I think that the massive shift we've seen over just the last 2 or 3 years, the shift from text to video-based content, is as seismic to companies as desktop to mobile.
Right.
It's such a significant change for them. They don't have you can scale text-based content. Everyone can write more or less, but you don't have the skills to create videos, to produce videos. To really create a compelling video event.
Do you think that when I think about video, it's easy to create if you're willing to get in front of a camera. So is that where the challenge is?
Well, I think there are 2 aspects of video. Live video or creating, a talking head video.
Just your
that is pretty
iPhone
easy.
or-
But creating a compelling brand video.
Yes,
for example,
correct.
That's
different.
different. Yeah.
But you got to be out there talking.
Right.
And video is the best way. And first of all, out of all medias, it's the one that's forwarded the most, right? It's the one that people quote the most. No one, not in a bad way, but no one sits there and goes, I read in this press release, blah, 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 or I saw in this infographic this. They quote what they saw in a video, just like we all quote from movies. I mean, it's just how it is. So Kathleen, I think we have a question.
We do. We have a great question that just came in relating to the slide that's up and the different types of content assets that are noted there. So the question is, what types of content work better for lead generation versus conversion versus customer retention?
Mark, take the first part of it, and then I want to do.
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, I think one of the things, just step back a bit, I think one of the things we're going to start to see over the next year or 2 is content being much more optimized for the bottom of the funnel. Most content today is optimized for the top of the funnel. Engagement, awareness, education. More and more, I think we're going to see customers and marketers think about how do we get them down the funnel more and optimize. So in that regard, in terms of lead generation and demand generation, gated content is great. Give a couple of chapters of an ebook or a white paper, create the ability to give your email to download the rest of it. We've seen that work really well for our customers. Other parts of it, case studies are great for getting you through that decision-making part of the lower part of the channel, of the funnel, and even video to some extent.
So Deirdre, your clients must come to you all the time, and this must be the first question they ask, or one of the first questions they ask.
So we've had success with ebooks. We've also done infographics if they're rich enough with information, but even just the ability to have a webinar and ask people who sign up for their email addresses.
Right.
I just think now people with information, companies really have to be careful. GDPR, right?
Yep.
It's something that even if you're not in the UK,
Yep.
we all have
Yep.
to think about.
Our last webcast was
Exactly.
on the same topic. So Jeff, when you heard Kathleen's question, what were you thinking?
So I was thinking about customer attention. This is what's first and foremost in my mind every
Right.
day I walk into the office. And so I think in customer attention, it's probably webcasts and white papers and social posts. And
Right.
so customers want to know that you're a thought leader in the marketplace. They want to know they're dealing with a company that knows what they're doing, that knows what's coming next in the market. And so, and I think webcasts sort of, how do you know how
Yep.
to do a certain thing? Or did you know videos? Did you know we offer this service? Or did you know if you need to do something with our platform, you can do it this way? So I think webcasts are an important way of sort of demonstrating to customers what your company is all about and what services you provide.
And you mentioned GDPR, which is a huge issue, especially for global companies and how you collect and track data. And I think one of the things that GDPR is really driving customers and marketers to think about is declare data. How do I move from infer data to get our customers to willingly provide their information to us?
Right.
One of the things is signing up for a webinar, signing up for gated content.
But everyone was scared it was going to be a deterrent, right?
Yeah.
When it pops up when I'm on a website, in fact, I just flew back from London, so every single site I went to, or even if I tried to find out back in New York if the Yankees won yesterday and I went to the Yankee site, the GDPR information popped up. I don't mind it. In fact, I kind of like seeing it because I go, all right, these guys are protecting my data. I'm clicking right away.
Yeah, I think there's various aspects of GDPR.
Right.
What you're looking at is that consent form, use of cookies.
Yep.
I think most people just click. They probably don't even read it, and they don't care so much. But there are other parts to it in terms of, can I ad track you as much? Can I infer who you are by different data points to personalize things to you? That becomes more difficult to do. And that's why you need to have your customers willingly say, I'm going to put my hand up. I'm Mark. Here's who I am. I want to give you information because I'm getting a valuable transaction.
I love custom data to me. Jeff, it looked like you were about to add something.
No, I couldn't agree more about the declared data part of it and how it ties into GDPR. I mean, I think GDPR over time is going to give a framework for companies to feel comfortable collecting personal data, feel comfortable using that personal data because they're working within the confines and the structure of GDPR.
I would say one other thing that I talk to customers a lot about is that GDPR should, it's a lot of pain. We've gone through a lot of pain over the last year, but it's a blessing in many ways because it makes the marketer's job harder in a good way. Marketers have had it easy for a long time. Put some pixels on, track some users, use some social posts, do some hashtags, and set it and forget it. Not really sustainable. Well, now you really have to think about, how do I create a relationship with this customer?
All right, let's go on to the next poll question, then we have a bunch more content to go over. So this question is basically, what kind of content do customers say they want? All right, so again, what kind of content do your customers say they want? Case study infographics, podcasts, press release, social posts, videos, webcasts, white papers, I don't know. All right, so again, you guys know the drill now. 22333, type in A through I. All right, so what do you think customers want?
Well, I hear a lot from our customers that their customers want case studies.
Yep.
They want some proof, they want some validation, they want to see how other customers have received value from it. And infographics are always something that we see that customers really helps distill a point, but it's also highly shareable. So I would say case studies and infographics are two things that pop out for me.
Jeff?
No, I agree with that completely, and that's what I want to see too when I'm evaluating a company and their products is, case studies on how it's worked for other companies that they're providing services to. Look at the result. Sorry, I got distracted because results
I was going to say
starting to
video.
come in.
The rest of the world isn't seeing this yet, so you're seeing a sneak preview of the results, so you're cheating. But
that's what I want too, and for the same reasons that Mark outlined. I think. Now, I would say if a company does it well, like a 2 or 3 minute webcast, I think is really beneficial.
short content.
Yeah.
TED Talk type of programs, even shorter.
Yeah.
Deirdre, what do you think it's going to be? Or what do you think your customers who you're working with every day, you know?
Video, video, video. People learn through video. And I also, even though I know what the results are, I would have said this, that we're all into professional development.
Yep.
It's so important because we need to step out of our comfort zones. We know it's not like years past.
Yep.
So webcasts are just feeding us information.
So I got to tell you something, when I sign up for a webcast, if I get to the webcast and it ends up being an audio-only webcast, 90% of the time I'll jump off it. Right? Because right now, if you're going to spew content to me or expect me to believe what you say, I want to look at your face, Mark. I want to hear what you're saying. So do you think the trend's going to be more and more? Still, I think the fact is like 60% of all marketing webcasts are audio only.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I've seen some of the things that you guys are doing on the West platform and some of the new announcements. And I think combining video with information together in a cohesive way where you can have both parts of your brain working at the same time, I think really is really effective.
All right, before we do that, can we go to the results? I almost forgot to go over the results because we're actually looking at the results right now. All right, this is pretty interesting. Jeff, Stacey, even before the first one popped up there, you were sort of dead on case studies. They
I
wanted
think
to know.
Mark raised it first, so I'll give him
Both of you
credit.
guys. It's pretty amazing. Video,
Absolutely.
14% of webcasts. So actually, it's the same number that care about video and case studies. 43% of our audience, and 14% say, I don't know. And I actually kind of get that. But what does it tell you, Deirdre, when you look at this?
Well, it tells me that people want to learn through what others have done. So case studies is really big and they're helpful because it can frame out then how they can move forward. And just the whole video and interactive, that is not surprising.
Right. I love that the case studies is up there because I wouldn't have thought that. But then if I really take a step back, I even look at video. I want you to tell me a story. Right. So it's really a video case study, even though a case study could be written.
Right, and case studies are hard because as a company, you need to go reach out to a customer and get their permission, and you want to make sure that you actually have delivered value that is repeatable and referenceable.
Right.
But I think it is the best type of content.
Which is incredible because it's going to lead me to my next question for you, all right? And this is for you, Mark. What are the key trends and challenges facing marketers when it comes to creating and distributing high-performance owned content?
Right, and you know, one of the things that we're looking at and working with our customers are what are the trends, right? We know what we are today, but what things you have to prepare for. And you know, I talked a little bit about this, you know, the rise of visual content and how big of a seismic shift it is for customers. They struggle with it, but they understand, as you said, video is shared more, it's clicked more, it's engaged with more. It's a fundamental change. Most companies don't know how to handle it today. It's a work in progress, and you know, we at Scribble try to help our customers with that. The second is we're moving to a world of hyper-personalization and more real-time. You know, it used to be you had one piece of content for all your audience. Now you have to create like 100 derivatives based on the persona and so on. And that means more content, more informed content, going back to AI, more insightful into the audience. And again, declare data. We're moving in a place where we need to be able to provide a value transaction where our customers say, hey, here's my information. I'm willingly giving it to you.
Awesome. And because I'm really meaningful, on my mind is time, right? I understand it. Everyone watching this is giving up their time to watch this. So I want to jump to my next question. I'm going to throw this out to the entire panel. What are some tips, best practices for optimizing your own media channel and content? Anyone want to jump in first?
I want to jump in just on the influencers. I know we mentioned it before, but if you want to optimize what you're doing, if you pick the right influencers, you're tapping into their networks. And influence doesn't mean popularity. It means action and how people are going to act.
Mark?
You know, I would say something maybe it's a bit more forward-looking again. I think the best tip that I could give, and I think where customers are going to have to, marketers are going to have to be, is to integrate their own content solutions across business units. It's not just a content, it's not just a marketing thing, it's sales enablement. How do we use content to drive sales and buyer interactions? It's within HR, it's within PR. I think in a couple of years what you'll see is that own content and content strategy and content delivery is integrated across sales and marketing operations and other operations groups.
So
But
Jeff,
that-
how important, I'm sorry, go on.
I was going to say, that means you need a workflow process.
Yep.
And I think that's where companies don't always connect the pieces. We all talk about getting out of our silos and how marketing and PR and HR and legal, whoever, we all have to be together. But when you're talking about that across, that really means people connecting and figuring out how you're going to move from creative and strategy all the way through the editing, approval, creation, and distribution.
Right.
And that's tough.
How important is to constantly refresh your content and not have it get stale? Jeff?
Well, it's obviously incredibly important to repurpose the content that you have in many different channels, but obviously you have to keep it refreshed on an ongoing basis and continue to tell your story. Now, this is Mark's slide, so I can't speak to it.
I'm just
on the
popping this for
question,
people to look at.
yeah. So on the question of, though, how do you optimize your content, right? This is really challenging, and it goes into the whole realm of, search engine optimization and how do you, but I think sort of SEO is sort of morphing into semantic search, right? And the future direction is all around semantic search and Google's knowledge graph. And how do you, so if people don't know, like the knowledge graph is what has been driving Google search for a number of years. They first started introducing this in 2012. So if you do a search of any company, right, there's a little panel that appears in the upper right corner, and that's being driven by Google's knowledge graph. So one of the things you have to do is make sure you're appearing there. A lot of people don't really totally appreciate this fact, but a lot of that data is derived from Wikipedia. So one of the tips is, right, make sure your Wikipedia page is kept up to date.
Which is
that's
something I wouldn't even
driving,
think about, right? So
right. And so there's a whole bunch of other technical things around, schema.org and the fact that you use micro-tagging on your content. So it's not about SEO and keywords anymore. It's about micro-tagging your content to make sure it's being picked up by the Google Knowledge Graph.
great points. So Mark, here's a question for you. How important is it to mix up your content? So we all talked that video is so important, but if I came to wherever your social is or on your site and it was all just talking head after talking head or video, is it really important to mix up the content?
Yeah, absolutely. And we went through the types of content. I would say you probably should hit all of those at some point. But yeah, you need to mix it up, not only because people need variety, but each piece of content serves a different purpose. Top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. So if you really want to move your customers through that, you need to get there. And this slide is really what, if you go back a slide, I don't know if you can do that or not, but one of the challenges for marketers today is this: how do I get high-performing content? And unfortunately, we live in a content shock world. Everyone's putting out content.
Right.
90% of it isn't really effective.
No.
5% drives 90% of engagement. How do you tailor your strategy so that you're in the 5%?
But in order to
yeah.
do that, you need to do a content audit. And that should have been a question. How many companies actually perform content
What's
audits?
a content audit?
So it's actually looking at different pieces of content that you send out there and how people engage
Really?
and what they've done. Absolutely. Are they retweeting it, resharing, creating their own content? Are they liking it? Are there
basically what's
comments
been
around?
successful and what hasn't been.
Exactly.
And then repeat your success stories.
Yep.
It isn't like just focus a huge amount of time on making the perfect set of content, because you don't know what's going to be perfect until you start publishing.
Well, it just goes to
But
your
once you
slide,
start
to
publishing
95, right?
Exactly.
You got to try to get to the 5. If you don't
right.
try,
That's
how do you
the
know?
whole point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it might not be the piece that you think is going to be the most effective.
Right, and it also gets to understand what type of content does your audience want, because
what
you
do
may
they
think
like?
you know what you want, but pairing it with what your audience interests are.
Why don't we see what the audience wants? So Kathleen, do I have any questions?
Yeah, actually, there's a great question relating to the conversations that's taking place right now. So, when you think about this 5% and 90%, the question reads, I'm part of a small marketing team. Our company has a website and a blog, but we don't really know where to go next. So what's what would you recommend for a small marketing team that is time constrained and bandwidth constrained? They want to get that 90%. What would the panel say to that?
Deirdre, what would you do?
I would say talk to your customers. What do they want from you? What do they need? Where are they? A simple survey, poll. You could even do some one-on-one interviews to find out.
Mark?
A few things. What Deirdre said is true, and also looking at what are your competitors doing?
There you go.
What content's working for them that you can tell, and maybe that helps inform it. And secondly, I think social still is highly effective. Get out there with social, understand some of the trends that are driving your industry, be part of the conversation. And really, I think it is be part of the conversation and bring your audience in with you.
All right, so Kathleen, before you ask the next question, so just so everyone knows, Kathleen Alcorn basically heads up our marketing at WDMS, and she's amazing at doing it. Her and her team, Lisa and her team put together this broadcast as well. So what about you, Kathleen? Give me an answer. You answer that question that was just asked.
Well, it's funny. I could actually have submitted that question because I am part of a small marketing team trying to maximize, the content that we push towards our audience. I mean, the good news is that I would agree. I think that your target market tells you exactly what they're looking for and needing. I mean, we spend a lot of time measuring and understanding what our customers and our prospects are clicking on, what they're searching for. So we're using a lot of intelligence from our SEM and SEO strategy to inform how we produce content and how we prioritize our content development. So I would also agree, I think the panel spoke earlier and someone mentioned about using a mix and a broad mix of content. And I would agree with that. It's a little overwhelming when you think about having to prioritize and produce infographics and case studies and podcasts and social and video and all of this. But, you just sort of have to get yourself organized, map out a plan, and then work your plan because you do have to hit all of it. And the good thing now is with content, you can create a piece like this webcast that we're creating now. We're able to take this and take pieces of the content and use it in social and use it in blogs and use it in short form case study pieces. So we'll be taking and using pieces of this hour-long program in a lot of short ways.
Awesome.
So create once and publish in many channels.
All right, so Kathleen, before you ask the next question, she is so going to yell at me when we get off this that I have to put her on the spot. I am in so much trouble. But your answer was amazing. Kathleen, what's your next question?
You are in trouble, Ben, just so you know. So the last question to the panel, I think is a great one as well that came in. The question is, realistically, how long does it take to build a fully maximized content strategy?
Wow.
Well, I like to say that owned content is like luggage, right? You're going to own it for its lifetime. So I think you have to think with very long timelines in place. You have to create that narrative, but you have to start in small chunks. And again, depending on the size of your marketing organization and what you can do, starting off with some simple messaging that are effective, using social to advocate for it and to push it out, while you develop your corporate-owned narrative and messaging.
Awesome. Jeff?
Yes, I think a lot of things we're talking about here and all of these different channels are really easy in theory, but in practice they're very challenging. So I think the question was around how long does it take to develop the strategy, right? You're never going to be finished. You're going to be publishing content forever. But the strategy, I don't know, 6 months or something probably. You need to spend a significant amount of time in developing the strategy. I think one of the keys also is figuring out, don't try to do everything at once. Figure out where your key audiences are. Where you're going to publish to those audiences, and then cross-publish between different channels. And so if part of your strategy is sort of the tactics of the order in which you're publishing and cross-publishing.
All right, you have 30 seconds to answer because I have one more question.
I was just going to say that we're moving into this realm of agile.
Right.
So where we used to do a lot of planning over a longer period of time, an agile framework, we work in shorter sprints, where I think you're doing, testing, learning, and then reapplying, and then doing something else. So it's just a different way to think.
Yeah.
So Mark, Deirdre, Jeff, thank you so much. I learned a lot. I'm kind of humbled being on this, moderating this panel because it was really compelling to me. So hopefully it was really compelling to everyone watching. Please don't forget to check out West's Global Summit that we're doing in about 10 days from now. It's going to be pretty awesome. We're actually, the whole theme of our summit is we're enabling our customers to tell their story, and we're going to tell our story. So we're calling it Y/OUR, your story and our story. So from me, Kathleen, Jeff, Deirdre, Mark, I want to thank the entire crew that helped put this on. Lisa, who's not here, Jeremy, Henry, Scott, Ricky, and John, who's back there as well. Thanks for making us look really good on camera, and thank you very much for participating. Have a great day.